We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores. Yet, the more I've experienced, the more I've learned that no matter how far we travel, or how fast we get there, the most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us.
What is a motorcycle generation? Unlike a facelift or other small changes which may occur from year to year on any motorcycle, new generations have much more significant upgrades. Everything undergoes substantial changes, from the overall design and body structure to the features and the engine. Generation changes usually only occur every few years. The Honda GoldWing has evolved from a naked bike to what is now the epitome of a luxury touring motorcycle. Almost 50 years later, the GoldWing has set new standards in motorcycle touring and is still the yardstick by which all other tourers are measured by. It is the flagship, the Starship Enterprise. Let's take a look at the very first generation GoldWing. When it was released in 1975, very few motorcycles were more powerful or faster than the GL1000. It had a 999cc liquid-cooled boxer 4-cylinder engine with a 5-speed gearbox. It produced 80 horsepower with 83 Nm of torque. This gave it a quarter-mile time of approximately 13 seconds, with a top speed of 200 km an hour. It weighed 265 kilos. And was often ridiculed for being too heavy, as only the Harley-Davidson Electra Glide was heavier. But due to its very low centre of gravity, it was a surprisingly nimble machine. It featured a dummy fuel tank, which was actually a storage area as the fuel tank was under the seat, 3 disc brakes, a shaft final drive, and it had wire spokes laced to aluminium rims. Later models had Comstar wheels. Honda took note of what riders were doing to their own bikes, and in 1980 they increased the engine capacity by 86 cc's and released the second generation, the GL1100. These specs are for the top-of-the-line 1982 Aspencade model, and by now Honda's focus was well and truly on touring. Power was up by just the 1 horsepower, but torque increased by 5 Nm. Both quarter-mile times and top speed are down slightly, mainly due to the substantial weight increase of 53 kilos. Noted features were a factory full fairing, panniers and a top box, stereo radio cassette sound system, CB radio, a luxury touring seat with passenger backrest, air-assisted suspension with an onboard air compressor, plus electronic ignition. Later models also had an LCD instrument panel. Unlike the majority of motorcycle manufacturers, Honda quickly realised how important it was to consider pillion passenger comfort, as the passenger was usually the rider's wife, and that they would definitely play a part in the motorcycle's purchase. (1984) was the year that the third generation was introduced. Engine capacity was increased by another 97 cc's, and the bike gained 14 horsepower, plus another 17 Nm of torque, The quarter mile time was a half a second quicker than the previous generation, while top speed was marginally better as well. The bike featured hydraulic valve adjusters, an upgraded LCD instrument panel, and some later models also featured fuel injection. In 1988, we had liftoff. And the fourth generation was totally redesigned from the ground up. This new GoldWing had grown in every single dimension. The engine capacity increased by a further 338 cc's. The engine had grown 2 more cylinders, and it now also featured a reverse gear. Power was up by a further 6 horsepower, but the torque had increased by a whopping 45 newton metres. Quarter mile times were consistently under 13 seconds, while top speed remained pretty much the same. This bike was gargantuan, and its weight was now 360 kilos. Honda went back to carbies for the 1500, but instead of having a carbie for each cylinder, like all previous models, it had 2 much larger carbies supplying the fuel to all 6 cylinders. It also had a much larger windshield, a much more comprehensive fairing, a longer wheelbase and more accessories. What it lacked in manoeuvrability, it more than made up for with sheer unadulterated luxury. The GL 1500 was so far ahead of the competition at the time, it was known as the Starship Enterprise on 2 wheels. By 2001, the GoldWing had well and truly earned its legendary status as the luxury touring motorcycle, and the introduction of the 5th generation GoldWing saw the focus on improving performance. Engine capacity increased by 312 cc's, which gave the bike another 19 horsepower and 17 newton metres of more torque. The now 1800cc bike produced quarter mile times around 12.5 seconds, and its top speed was again around 200 kilometres an hour. The weight remained relatively the same, but with the reintroduction of fuel injection, the 1800 was a pretty lively bike to ride, and better than the 1500 in almost every way. It accelerated quicker, stopped quicker, and handled better. Every rider, no matter how old they are, likes that sports bike feeling, right? With a 6-disc CD changer, heated grips and 150 litres of storage space on board, the 1800 GoldWing again totally blitzed the opposition. 2018 was the debut of the 6th and current generation GoldWing. The now square engine was up by just the 1cc to 1833 cc's, but for the first time the engine had 4 valves per cylinder, and it produces 6 horsepower more than its predecessor. This top-of-the-line Tour model features an automatic 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, plus reverse. Top speed is factory limited to 180 km an hour, or 112 miles an hour, but the speed listed here is correct for an unrestricted bike. Another first for the GoldWing is the weight is down for the very first time, 40 kilos in fact. Combine this with a newly designed narrower fairing which reduces drag by 12%, the 6th generation GoldWing is faster and more exciting to ride than ever. And even though the DCT automatic produces less horsepower and less torque to the rear wheel than the standard manual clutch 6-speed, it is still quicker, and it is the sportiest GoldWing to date. The trade-off for this sportier new look and extra performance is there is 40 litres less of storage space on board, and the seat, while still being comfortable, is not as plush as it was on previous generations. The many technological features of this latest generation include an electronic adjustable windshield, cruise control, 4 riding modes, a beefed up stereo, heated seats and grips, traction control, electronically adjustable suspension, sat-nav, and a premium colour 7-inch LCD screen. It also has keyless ignition and storage compartments with hydraulic dampers, which allow them to open and close very smoothly. Basically all the technological hardware and software that any modern rider could ever wish for. The standard manual version even has hill start assist. Even if you're not a fan of high-tech motorcycles, you can't deny that this latest generation of the Honda GoldWing is still the ultimate long-distance touring motorcycle. And after almost 50 years of production, it is still the king of kings.